Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradburn, and alongside me is Logan Camden. And as you guys can see, we're back in our normal setup. We have returned from our trip to New York, which was a ton of fun. We did the BDG Combine as we discussed. We played 7-on-7 football with those guys. We did their trivia tournament. But now, Logan, it's time to really lock in for the playoff grind. You and I are both going to be chained to our respective radiators in our cages for the next 2+ months, as it should be, because nothing else matters. We did preview half of the first round playoff series on our last show. Today, we are going to talk about the two matchups that have been set in stone since then, that being the 2 seed versus 7 seed in both conferences. We're going to talk about the fact that Damian Lillard is now expected to return for the first round series between the Bucks and Pacers at some point. We're going to talk about what we just saw in the play-in, and we are going to preview the remaining play-in games. So that's all coming. But we're going to start, Logan, by previewing these full series that are set. And I want to talk first about the one that I think is significantly more interesting and compelling than the other, that being the Houston Rockets taking on the Golden State Warriors. And even though the Rockets are the 2 seed, they're the higher seed here, I feel like both you and I would view it as an upset if Houston were to win. I don't want to speak for you. I'll at least say that's been my view on this matchup. So what key components have to go right for Houston if they are going to win this series?
I do view the Rockets in the underdog a little bit because of the experience factor here for Houston. You know, Golden State's got 3 guys who are tried and true in the playoffs, have cut their teeth a lot on the biggest stages, that being Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green, 3 legends of the game. But more importantly, it's Houston's inability to consistently churn out good offensive results. This is the 22nd ranked half-court offense in basketball, and that's my biggest concern about this team. But I do think they have real advantages against teams in this playoff field and against the Golden State Warriors in this first-round matchup. First, I think you have to start with just the overwhelming size and athleticism advantage that Houston has basically against everybody this year. This is one of the best rebounding teams in basketball. They ranked number 1 in rebounds per game and rebound rate, and they rank number 1 in offensive rebounds per game and offensive rebound rate. And what does that do? It means that Houston is just better at generating extra possessions than any other team in basketball. They're also number 1 in field goal attempts per game. That's a real advantage. Like, I don't want to undersell that aspect of Houston. That's been the reason that they're the 2 seed. Like, this is an elite defense, and this is an elite group at generating extra possessions. Along with that, I think the other key to this series is how much is Houston going to really be able to disrupt Steph Curry. They were 4th in defensive rating in the regular season, and if you hearken back to this last matchup that we saw between these two teams, they really stifled Steph. Steph had 3 points on 1 of 10 from the field and 1 of 8 from deep. And I would say that I think Houston probably has the best perimeter personnel of anybody to guard Steph Curry. Amen Thompson, Dylan Brooks, and Fred VanVleet, they're all hounds. I mean, if you're looking even further, like Tari Eason, some of the big, double big lineups that this team is going to be able to trot out with Steven Adams or Alperen Sengun, I think it's vitally important that they shut down Steph and limit his impact as much as possible. And if they check both of those boxes, Carson, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Houston has a really good chance at winning this series. Like, if you can hold Steph in check and you can stick to your identity, really strong defense, dominate the glass, like, Houston really isn't that far away from being able to win this series. I think it's going to be really close. I do worry about this team generating offense, but those are 2 strengths that I think Houston really has going into this playoff series.
I think that those are the exact 2 things that you have to highlight, because they're a super unconventional playoff team, but especially they're a super unconventional 2 seed because you mentioned the half-court offensive issues they have, the lack of that, like, one really high-end offensive creator, and really just the lack of high-end aggregate offensive skill that they have. Those have been things that have concerned me about this team all year long, but where are they excellent? They are excellent on the glass. They are a legitimately historic offensive rebounding team, and they are an excellent defensive team. And specifically against the Warriors, a team that is going to play a ton of small ball, you can see that differential on the glass being hugely in Houston's favor. The Warriors are also a team that plays small, and so they're pretty quick, but they're not a super athletic team, and they are very, very dependent on the offensive creation, specifically of Steph Curry, who is going to be facing overwhelming defensive attention from a team that has a bunch of insane athletes who play with their heads on fire every minute that they're out there on the floor. So, first key for Houston to win this is how much can they dominate the glass? Because we know that they are going to win that battle. In the 3 games that Steph played against Houston this year, the Dubs were only -10 on the glass in total. That's really not too bad when you think about the potential gap between these teams on the glass in this series. But interestingly, I think in the Warriors' most recent game, their play-in win over the Grizzlies, you saw something that's relevant for their potential matchup against Houston, a team that is so great on the glass that could deploy some of those double big lineups, as you mentioned, because when Zach Edey was on the floor for the Grizzlies against the Warriors, I saw this courtesy of Data Baller, which is a phenomenal website, phenomenal follow on Twitter. In those minutes, the Grizzlies grabbed 45% of their own misses, and they grabbed 79% of the Warriors' misses. The Grizzlies actually rebounded really poorly when Edey was off the floor, but when the Grizzlies went mostly double big or when they just had their one massive center on the floor, Memphis really dominated the rebounding differential. And just speaking specifically to that game and the Edey discourse after, there were a bunch of people who were clowning on him and saying he sucks. I think people can underestimate just how valuable it is to be absolutely massive.
That shit doesn't pop up in the box score. And if you go to one of these websites like Carson's talking about, like Data Ball, it'll give you specifically if you're looking for it, if you go offense or defense, it'll tell you how much better that team rebounds the ball. I don't have it off the top of my head. I can pull it up here in a minute, but I believe it's ridiculous. The Grizzlies' rebound rate offensively and in total is like 10% higher with Edey on the floor. And so while his raw rebounding numbers may not reflect his complete impact on the game.
Well, he did also have 17 rebounds in that game, and he had 14 points. It was just ugly, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there were some bad moments with his hands. His finishing was bad in that specific game, but when you can completely dominate the glass single-handedly, that's a really valuable thing. And the Rockets as a team are better at that than anybody else, and they have the best individual rebounder in the sport, in my opinion, in Steven Adams, who is effectively just a specialist at this point in his career, being so excellent at that one trait. And I think that we'll get to some more of the specifics with his minutes. How do they deploy him later? But that's a big key for Houston. How convincingly do they win on the glass? And then how much can they slow down the Warriors offense? And specifically, how much can they make life hell on Steph Curry? I saw a phenomenal stat tweeted out by Ben Pfeiffer the other day. Shout out to him. In the 41 possessions that Steph Curry was defended by Amen Thompson this season, he averaged 9.1 points per 75 possessions, 9 assists, and he had a true shooting percentage of 31. So I do think that you use Amen as the primary defender on Steph in this series. Fred VanVleet has also done a very good job, but Amen is just a different level of overwhelming athlete. His size is so insane. He's one of the best point of attack defenders on the planet. He has a nonstop motor. He is going to constantly be hounding Steph off ball, and then he is going to be incredibly difficult for Steph to separate from it all. Difficult to shoot over top of him. Like, he is just their best defensive player, and I think that he should be stuck to Steph like glue for the most part, although obviously the Rockets are going to switch a lot as well, and that's another advantage that they have. They can switch 1 through 4 against Steph, and you're getting VanVleet on him, you're getting Dylan Brooks on him. When those guys come on the floor, you're going to get some Tari Eason possessions, and like, that's a lot of really good defensive players on the wings. So Steph has really struggled against the Rockets this year. You mentioned the 3-point game obviously is the one that stands out first, but over their 3 meetings, he's averaged 16 points per game on 51% true shooting, and the Warriors had a 101 offensive rating in those games. So you know the Rockets are going to harass him. They are going to be super physical off ball. And guess what? They're probably going to get away with that because that's just the reality of how Steph is officiated. It's not fair, but that's the way that it is. And this is a team that is super athletic, that is super physical. They are going to do their best to really punish him, beat him up physically. And then, like I said, they can switch 1 through 4. And when you bring the center into the action, they're just going to blitz the shit out of him. That's what we saw in the last game, and it's force the ball out of Steph's hands, try to force them into some turnovers, and just make anybody else beat you. So considering how difficult his matchup is, and considering how singularly I expect the Rockets to be focused on stopping Steph as a scorer and making his other teammates make shots and make decisions, I don't see this as a super big scoring series for Steph. I think he'll give you 23 to 25 points per game, but I'm not anticipating the 28 points per game on 66% true shooting guy that he's been since Jimmy joined the team. I think he's going to be a playmaker first in this matchup, and that's why the performance of his teammates offensively, taking advantage of 4-on-3s, capitalizing on Steph drawing so much attention, and stepping up is going to be absolutely massive. That's a collective thing, but there's one guy who I look at specifically for the Warriors, Logan, and I think he has to be phenomenal, and that's Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, before we get into Jimmy real quick, I want to talk about this rebounding thing because I completely agree with you with the offensive points. How are you going to stagger these minutes? What are you going to do with the 4 and 5 spot with Dre, Post, and Looney? Like, how do you strike that balance, and what are you looking for, like, adjustment-wise, like, depending on the results that you get for the rest of the series?
I think there are a bunch of interesting decisions that the Warriors have to make with their rotations, specifically when it comes to how do they hang in there physically and on the glass. I think Looney has to match Steven Adams' minutes. Like, otherwise, I just think the Warriors are getting absolutely decimated on the glass. Steven Adams, as I mentioned, is having a historic offensive rebounding season. When he is on the floor without Şengün, the Rockets grab 42% of their own misses. He alone grabs 7 offensive rebounds per 36 minutes, I think, but his impact goes so far beyond that because he just eats up so much space with box outs. He's just a one-of-a-kind weapon on the offensive glass. I don't think that you can even be competitive on the glass in his minutes without having another big guy. Looney, right, isn't as big. He isn't as strong as Steven Adams, but he's another guy who they're both pretty ground bound, but they just have phenomenal instincts for the ball. They know where to be. They use their strength really well. They're very good in terms of positioning themselves on the glass. So I think that they're going to match Adams' minutes with Looney. And then the really interesting thing is, how much do we see the Rockets double big lineups, and how do the Warriors try to counter that? Because in the double big minutes, that Şengün and Adams out there together, the Rockets grab 47% of their own misses. Those double big lineups have a plus 33 net rating. That's only in 150 minutes, but they have just been completely dominant on both sides of the ball. The challenge at that point is, when you have 2 bigs on the floor, 2 true bigs, I don't know how much you can go to that when Steph Curry is on the floor. Just because having 2 guys who are slower footed, obviously to different extents, right? Şengün is quicker on his feet than Steven Adams, but still is not somebody who you're comfortable switching, is not somebody who you want guarding in space a lot. Like, just with the level of shooting that you get from Steph, the ability of this offense to quickly attack the advantages that he creates, I think that at that point, the speed advantage for the Warriors and the shooting, and just specifically Steph, probably makes it difficult for the Rockets to play those double big lineups. What I would really try to do if I'm Houston is squeeze a lot of those double big minutes in when Steph is off the floor. And that's what they did in the last meeting between these two teams, because then I'm not nearly as worried about it defensively. I actually think it's a really good look defensively against a lineup that has less creation, that has less shooting, and that doesn't have that one-of-a-kind weapon who just makes you guard so much space like Steph Curry. And I think that they'll probably try the double big looks for maybe even more minutes than that. Like, maybe they will try it when Steph is on the floor just because it's been so effective for them. But I would be more inclined to say, pick your spots with it. Try to take advantage of some of those less offensively skilled lineups when you feel like you're not worried about the limitations of going double big. And that could be a real strength of Houston's in this series.
I think it could too, and it's not just limited to those guys either, right? The thing that I think makes Houston so special is it's like Amen is an elite positional rebounder. Jabari Smith Jr., is a solid rebounder too. Like, there's just, like, throughout the lineup, if it's Tari Eason, however many deep, like, Houston's always with 90% of their lineups in this series are going to have that athletic and size advantage on the floor. But I do think the Warriors' offensive supporting cast is going to have to pull their weight. And I think guys are going to have to shoot well in non-Steph minutes. I think guys are going to have to shoot the lights out period, when Steph's on the floor, because you're mentioning him drawing all these double teams. I don't think that's something that's just going to stop in this series, which means Pods has got to be butter from deep. Moody has got to be butter from deep. Buddy Hield, good in transition, has got to be hitting his shots and has to play smart basketball. But the guy that it's going to lay on the shoulders the largest, as you mentioned, it's Jimmy Butler. And I believe in playoff Jimmy. I ranked Jimmy in my top 20 of NBA players for the playoffs before we started. And I'm very, very encouraged by what we've seen in the two most important Warriors games recently, against the Clippers and against Memphis. Against Memphis, Jimmy went for 38 points. He had 18 free throw attempts. And this is going to sound crazy right now, what I'm about to say. Jimmy has to be even more aggressive, because even down late in that game and throughout, passing up shots at the rim. I'm going to throw my remote through the TV if I see Jimmy do that during this series. Like, that's going to drive me crazy. Jimmy's got to be even more aggressive. Like, I need to take over Jimmy. He's got to feel the moment, and he's got to take over. The thing that I'm worried about, though, Carson, it's not going to be easy against Houston because they have such elite perimeter personnel. And the stark difference, I thought Memphis defended him really, really poorly in the play-in. And what I mean by that is, one, a lot of minutes they were putting Edey on Jimmy, and they were sagging off. And I know that Jimmy traditionally is not a guy that you're okay with letting him take a few three-pointers, right? Because that's not his bread and butter. I don't think Houston should give Jimmy any cushion at all. I'm not saying defend him like Steph Curry, but don't give him a lane. Because I think a guy like Jimmy, if you give him that cushion off ball, I think he's going to cook you. You give him a little bit of space to work with, that's just advantage Jimmy. And I think Houston has got really, really good personnel. Because, right, even if you have a man on Steph most of the series, Jabari Smith is still going to be out there, right? Dylan Brooks is still going to be out there. It's not going to be easy. But Jimmy's got to be aggressive, man. Like the last game that I was talking about in the regular season against Houston, Jimmy had 7 shots. That can't happen in a single game in this series. I need Jimmy shooting 15 to 20 times at a minimum a night. And like I said, I need him to feel the gravity of the moments. If Steph's having an off night, he can't be afraid to take over. Like, I know Jimmy's quote, and it was awesome, and I'm so glad that Jimmy appreciates his situation. He said after the 38 piece, I got my Batman, I can play Robin. There are going to be games in this series where Jimmy's got to be Batman. He can't take that back seat. And it's vitally important that they got Jimmy at the deadline, because I would not have given the Dubs a prayer in this series if they didn't have him. But now that they've got him on the roster, it's time for playoff Jimmy to show up and pull his weight. If that doesn't happen, Carson, I'd say this is an easy Houston victory. But I believe in playoff Jimmy, and I think we're going to get a good series out of him.
There have been some really good indicators as of late for Jimmy still being able to flip that switch, man, and take his game up a level when it comes to the playoffs. He has been so committed to doing whatever he can to fit in with the Warriors, right? To not step on any toes, to be just like the ultimate team guy fitting into this motion system. But we've been saying, like, at some point, Jimmy, you have to dial up that aggression. This team is going to need it. They are especially going to need it in this matchup when you're expecting Steph to be blitzed so much out of pick and roll, and you know that you're going to have those 4-on-3s. Your next best offensive player has to be a guy who can capitalize on that. Your next best offensive player has to be able to carry the load in the non-Steph minutes and really step up and be aggressive there, because there's just a lot of offensively limited players on this team, and there's a lot of guys who tend to be passive, and that's why they need Jimmy to step up and be that consistent second scoring presence. You mentioned just how great he's been in the last couple of games. Also, in the minutes he's on the floor without Steph Curry this season, per 75 possessions, he averages over 25 points, 7.5 assists on 64% true shooting with a very low turnover rate. Gets to the line at an obscene rate in those minutes. And the Warriors have actually been really good with Jimmy on the floor and Steph off. So I'm super encouraged by seeing him feel that sort of playoff atmosphere, feel that these have been 2 games that the Warriors desperately needed to win against the Clippers and the Grizzlies, and show you that he can get to that level as a scorer. That, I think, is a huge reason why I am confident in the Warriors in this series. But it's obviously not just Jimmy. Like you said, like Moody and Pods both really have to make shots. Pods has been shooting the shit out of the ball for half the year now. He's been a 40+% guy from deep, so that is really good. But they have to be smart about attacking these 4-on-3s, and they have to take care of the basketball. That was a big problem for the Warriors in their last meeting against the Rockets. They had 20 turnovers in that game. And obviously that then kickstarts the Rockets' transition offense, where they're more effective than they are in the half court. They're this really young, athletic, energetic team. You don't want to give them those chances. All this being said, I think it's a really interesting challenge for the Warriors on the offensive end, what the Rockets present. I also think the Warriors defense can really slow down that Rockets offense. Like, I think this is pretty clearly the series that is going to be the nastiest, the most defensive, probably the lowest scoring, which you don't often think of when you have a Steph Curry-led team. But the Rockets have some real offensive limitations, right? You mentioned how low they rank as a half-court offense. They're one of the worst shooting teams in basketball, bottom 10 in both three-pointers made and three-point percentage, and they're very efficient inside the arc. Like, they really, really specifically rely on their ability to dominate defensively and then offensively to produce decent efficiency by just giving themselves so many second chances on any one possession. But the spacing for them is gonna be a bit rough, and basically all of their key offensive players have really struggled in this matchup. Like I mentioned how rough Steph's numbers have been against the Rockets. You look at all the key Rockets. Jalen Green versus the Warriors this year averaged 12.6 points per game on 39% true shooting. He's been playing some pretty good basketball as of late, but when it comes to him having to take on this sort of offensive role, I have very little confidence in him versus a Warriors defense with this sort of speed, with this sort of activity, with this sort of collective defensive IQ. He's really struggled. Şengün versus the Warriors, 17.4 points per game on 51% true shooting. Not very good scoring production, really bad efficiency. Dre does a phenomenal job on him, is such an excellent post defender with his strength. Now, Şengün can bring you a lot of value if you can't keep him off the glass, but I think this is going to be a difficult matchup for him to create one-on-one scoring opportunities for himself. My beloved Amen Thompson has been okay against the Warriors, gives you 12, 8, and 4 on 50% true shooting. You know that on ball, they are going to give him cushion, and they are going to try to force him into taking some more of those floater range shots and short mid-range shots, which he's actually been quite solid on this year, but obviously is at his best getting to the rim. And he's incredibly difficult to keep away from the rim, even if you do play off him, because he's just a one-of-one kind of athlete. So I actually think he'll probably do better compared to his own standard offensively than a couple of the other guys. Off ball, you know that they're going to roam off of him, and I don't want to see him try to punish them for that with shooting. I want to see him, if he can draw a closeout, attacking them, but realistically, they probably won't be closing out on him much. They're going to dare him to shoot. And so he's going to have to find a way to still get to the rim on ball, to be excellent in transition, and to still find those opportunities as a cutter and as an offensive rebounder to be a productive offensive player. And Fred VanVleet has just been terrible versus the Warriors, under 9 points per game on 33% true shooting, and just a super erratic scorer of the basketball at this point, very inefficient. So that's the thing. The Rockets have a great defense, and the Warriors are very specifically reliant on a couple of offensive players to really bring juice for them. At the same time, the Rockets are just a very limited offense, and the Warriors have been number one in defensive ratings since Jimmy Butler joined the team. They are number one, I believe, in opponent turnovers forced since Jimmy Butler joined the team. And I do think that their personnel is very well set up to keep the Rockets from putting the ball in the basket efficiently. Really, the challenge is when they go small, can they keep them off the glass? And that's going to be really hard. But I think in totality, they can slow down the Rockets' offense more than vice versa.
I think the most important thing is, like you mentioned earlier, not letting these guys get ahead of steam and be able to get out on the break in transition. If you can keep it in the half court, I'm pretty confident in Golden State. Carson, there's one Houston Rocket that shot over 36% from deep.
Dillon Brooks.
On 3 or more attempts a game. Your best shooter's Dillon Brooks. And so, look, I know Dillon Brooks has had a really good year, but it's not just Amen Thompson to me. There's a lot of guys that I would be comfortable with helping off of, and that's kind of what I would try to do if I'm Golden State. Swarm their ball handlers, try to force turnovers, try to trap guys. And I'm not saying let Houston just shoot open threes, but I'm okay with conceding a lot of looks to a lot of players here. If it's Amen Thompson, if it's Sengun, if it's Steven Adams, there's not a lot of floor spacers here. And hell, even Dillon Brooks, man, Dillon Brooks doesn't scare me. Look, bro, if Dillon shoots 38% in this series, like, shout out Dillon Brooks, but I know his track record, and I'm kind of expecting a little bit of a meltdown here in this series because that's what he's shown us in the playoffs. But by and large, I'd be comfortable leaving these shooters and gambling a little bit more if I was Golden State on defense. Like, Houston doesn't scare me with their spacing. And I think that when you have two genius defenders like Dre and Jimmy, they can exploit that and use that to their advantage better than most teams. But like you mentioned, I think the biggest challenge is just going to be limiting those extra possessions because that's how Houston has been able to mitigate a lot of their skill issues this season.
It's their biggest strength offensively by far. What do you think the Warriors do with their rotations in this series? Because we talked about how do you have to try to deal with the Steven Adams problem, matching Looney's minutes with his. But there are a lot of other questions besides that. Like Jonathan Kuminga has fallen out of the rotation for this team in the last couple of games. Does he come back into the mix? Who do you think should be playing outside of the core guys who obviously are going to get their big minutes for the Warriors?
I don't know about Kuminga. So let's wipe Curry, Dre, Jimmy, right? Those guys are going to get all the burn.
Pods, Moody, their starting five is obviously
100%. After that, like you mentioned, I'm giving Looney a ton of burn with Steven Adams. Maybe I don't even play Looney outside of Steven Adams' minutes, but I'm matching those. I'm giving Quentin Post some burn. I just want to see what he can give me. And the reason I say that is I think that Post could have a big series in the sense that if he's matched up with an Adams or a Sengun, Post just changes the geometry of the Warriors' offense a little bit where you actually have that legitimate spacer. And he's not just a spacer in the half court. I really like Quentin Post as a shooter, as a trailer in transition as well. And so I would just kind of feel Post's minutes out. And what I mean by that is I give him some burn in the early second quarter. If he hits 2 threes, if he hits 3 threes and he's having a good night, I'll leave him out there and I'll give him some more burn. If he's not, maybe I play him less and I look to Dre at small ball or I look to Looney. But I think Post could have a really good series just in how he contrasts the other bigs for Houston. Those guys don't really want to get out of the paint a ton, and I think that could be a really interesting counter, especially if he's hitting threes. More importantly, can he battle on the glass? Because if he's getting beat there, I just don't think you can play him. But I like what I've seen from Post just in terms of positioning, defensive feel. He's not like a really high-end rim protector or anything like that. He's not a good rim protector, but he's normally in the right position where he can at least contest shots. So I'm giving Post some burn. I think you have to play Buddy just because of offensive skill. Like, Buddy's frustrating, but I think you need his shooting. I don't know what to do with Kuminga, man. Kuminga can have his games, but if I'm Houston, he's the guy that I'm leaving alone and, like, I'm daring to shoot and I'm playing off of. I don't know what to do with Kuminga, man. I honestly, I would put him more in the Post category where I'd give him a little bit of burn and just, like, feel his minutes out and see what he's giving me, but Kuminga to me is not really a big factor in this series. I don't think they need him as much as they need the other role players.
It's a tricky decision. I think you have to at least try Kuminga in this series for 10, 15 minutes a night in the early games and see how it goes. Because I have no problem with him not playing at all in certain matchups. I've been good with him getting these couple of DNPs.
I'm playing the boy Guy Santos over Kuminga, bro.
Listen, brother, hey, are you looking at my notes over here? I love Guy Santos. I think that he should play a decent amount in this series. I do think it's important to note, though, that Kuminga has been really good versus Houston. It's been his best matchup this year. He's given them 21 points and 7 rebounds a game on 59% true shooting. And it is valuable to have somebody against such an elite defense who can give the bench a little bit of juice offensively, someone who can match Houston's youth and athleticism out there. The challenge is, does he have the feel to play effectively in those minutes where Steph is going to be drawing so much defensive attention and it's about making good, quick decisions with an advantage? Like, he hasn't consistently shown an ability to do that. And then you think, okay, he brings the juice in the bench minutes, but really it's Jimmy you're expecting to carry those loads in the non-Steph minutes and step up. And Kuminga and Jimmy just do not complement each other on the basketball court. So if he ends up being a DNP, I'm fine with it. I really am. But I do think that I would give him a shot because there are some other guys who have been playing more who, like, I also have my issues with. Like, the thing with Kuminga is expectations for some people are so high and he's consistently failed to live up to them that then you think, oh, I'm so frustrated, he shouldn't play. But then there are other guys like Gary Payton II who I just don't love playing 20 minutes a game. And this is a specific matchup where I just think you need offensive juice where you can get it. And GP2 played pretty well against Houston in the last game and, like, is somebody who has really good instincts as a cutter, but he can be so limited offensively. He can be so tentative, and rightfully so, because the shooting obviously is a big limitation. He's a good finisher, but he's still a small guard. He's not a comfortable ball handler. Like, those are the sort of minutes where I would say, okay, I get it if you trust GP2 because you know that he's going to mostly make the right decisions, play hard, play smarter than Kuminga. But maybe just because of the ability, at least give Kuminga a shot. And you can have a short leash, man. I'm not a Kuminga guy. I've been very open about that for years. I thought they should have traded him a long, long time ago. And I just don't think that he is a good fit for the Warriors. I don't think that in terms of scheme, in terms of his readiness to really play winning basketball, but especially in a system that is so much about motion, making quick decisions, etc., it's just not a good fit, and he should be gone after this year. But I don't know if he should start out the series getting DNPs like he has been.
I think those are the three guys battling for, or maybe four if you want to throw Buddy into that mix, battling for those last wing minutes. If it's GP, Buddy, Santos, and Kuminga, ride the guy who's playing the best. But the rest of the guys, I'm comfortable with playing. I don't mind GP. GP normally just has such good instincts in basketball feel, but you wonder about in this matchup specifically just having a guy who's, more
can't
athletic
handle
and just
can't
bigger.
Shoot. Oh, yeah.
If it's more worthwhile having a guy like Kuminga out there just because he matches the physical profile. But I don't know, man. I'd throw each of those guys, all the four guys that I've mentioned, some wing minutes and play who's playing the best.
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with that philosophy because, like, I have mixed feelings about Buddy minutes, too, because it's like you want his shooting on the floor so badly in this matchup, but also he makes bad decisions at a level that's, like, arguably comparable to Kuminga. Like, those are two guys who are just not
the least
smart basketball players.
Defender out of the group, like.
Yeah. That's why I'm just thinking, man, get me more Guy Santos because Guy is big. He's athletic. He's a pretty good rebounder. We're talking about how pivotal it is to match Houston on the glass. Plays his ass off, like just a limitless ball of energy and shoots the ball decently well, is a pretty solid passer, smart basketball player. Like, I think that he checks the most boxes of what they need from just like that sort of multifaceted, big forward contributor in this matchup. So I'd like to see him play more than GP2. I have super mixed feelings about the Kuminga minutes. I think you give him a shot with a tight leash. And, like, to be clear, when I say a shot, I'm not talking about 20-plus minutes.
10 minutes.
You just can't trust him to do that in a playoff run. He's not ready, and I just don't think is part of the equation for the Warriors at this point, like a significant part of it. But yeah, 10, 15 minutes, I think you give him a shot. So, what's your official prediction here, Logan?
I can definitely see this series going the distance. That being said, I'm going to bet on the more experienced team, the team with the better offense, and frankly, the team with the two best offensive players, I think, in this series. So I'm going to take the Warriors in 6, but like I said, I could definitely see this going the distance, and Look, if Houston can swallow up Steph Curry, I mean, that gives them a real chance at winning this series. I'm not going to say that they don't. So I think they have an opportunity here, but I'm going to take the Dubs in 6 and say that they finish it on their home floor.
I do think the Rockets have a chance to win this series. Like, if they can just bludgeon the Warriors physically and dominate that battle on the glass, and like you said, really keep Steph in check, and if guys around him just aren't making enough shots, like, you can see that path. But what really gives me the confidence to pick the Warriors to win this series, like what puts me over the top, because I would have picked them either way, but I was debating picking this to go 7 because it feels kind of weird to not have any of these series out west going 7 because I think a number of them are so close. But it's this version of Jimmy that we've seen over the last couple of games. Like, I'm in. I do think that he still is a playoff riser. Logan, I know you've been very adamant about him really being able to scale up that scoring volume. I've seen enough over these last couple of games when he's needed to do it to be more confident in his ability to do that. And I just think the Rockets offense is going to look really ugly against a really good Warriors defense. So I do think that we are in for a fight. I think we're in for a war. I think there's going to be beef in this series. We've got Dillon Brooks and we've got Dre on the floor. We've got Amen. Amen was a violent child, Logan. I don't know if you've heard. Have you seen any of those edits of Amen just hitting people and doing awesome shit? It's pretty funny. Some of them start with the Sar being asked, like, did Amen ever get into trouble as a kid? And he goes, Amen was an aggressive child. I love Amen. That's my guy. So
Carson.
It's going to be personal, man. It's going to be a hell of a first-round series, I think.
Who gets ejected the most in this series?
I hope nobody gets ejected multiple times. But if I had to
I'm
guess...
going to take Dillon Brooks over 1.5 games.
Whoo! I don't know if I can go there. My honest opinion, there's one game in this series where both Dillon Brooks and Draymond get ejected. I think it's a mutual escalation. I think they're both John, and I think that they both get thrown out. I would not expect to see anything more than that. But, like, if you were to set the line for which series is most likely to have an ejection, this has got to be number 1. Like, maybe you look at Knicks Pistons because the Pistons have that kind of nasty vibe to them as well. Timberwolves, Lakers, maybe. I could see a Rudy Luka incident, but this feels like the one where you have a number of characters and you're just expecting that style of basketball, man, because I'm telling you, Steph is going to get roughed up. I think that he pulls through enough as one of the greatest offensive players we've ever seen, who is just so unbelievably good, and I think the offense around him, and especially Jimmy, do enough to win this series. Let's talk about the 2-7 matchup in the other conference, Logan, which is just not nearly as interesting. Celtics-Magic. What's your prediction here? I think we can basically cut to it. I mean, there's not a lot of keys to this one, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Celtics in 5. And, I mean, my biggest question about Orlando extending this series, because I have zero expectation at full health or close to full health that Boston would ever lose this. So can the Magic offense keep up with Boston is really my biggest question. This is the 27th half-court offense.
I'll just answer that one. Nope.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I'm pretty much aligned there with you, bro. This is the 27th half-court offense in basketball. And specifically, the reason that Boston poses, you know, such a challenge for Orlando really is, one, I mean, they're a great defense as is, but it really is the size that Boston has, because Orlando's a jumbo-sized team. And that's why we said in the play-in preview, obviously it's a one-game sample, so, you know, it's a 50-50, but that's why we took Orlando over Atlanta. Bigger team, it can bully some of these individual matchups. And that's why I would bet on Paolo and Franz versus a team with smaller wings or guys that they can move around. And I think that's an advantage that Orlando has. They can't exert any of their physical advantages over Boston. This is a poor shooting team. I just think Boston has such a comical margin in every game. Yeah. Like, I could see Boston not playing up to their standard in every single game and still sweeping, if I'm being honest. I don't think they would have to throw, like, their best punch, and I think they could win. So, in typical Boston fashion, I think they let one game get out of hand to Orlando. Maybe Paolo goes superhuman and gives you a 40-piece, and Cole Anthony gets hot. Franz Wagner knocks down some shots. Like, they play good defense. The Jays are off. I could see Orlando stealing one game, but no more than that. This is probably the most confident I am in any single series in the first round of the playoffs. So I'm going to take Boston in 5.
I'm going to take Boston to sweep here. They are just
I like it.
way better. But as you mentioned, like, they're also exceptionally well built to guard the Magic's 2 best offensive players, who are, like, by far the biggest threats, the most competent creators that they have as a basketball team, because they've got 2 excellent, big, strong defensive wings in the Jays. They have no defensive weak points for those guys to attack. And you think about, like, the one dude who it's maybe, okay, you can bring him out in space, and can you get past him? Could be Kristaps Porzingis, but, like, you just have KP play drop against them. You dare them both to beat you as shooters. Both been quite inefficient as jump shooters all year.
Like you mentioned earlier, or last episode with Gobert, if that's even an issue, you just stick KP in a corner and switch everybody else and let Horford and White and Holiday do all that work.
I don't even think you have to. I think just straight up drop is really effective, and they're just a bad offense, Orlando. You mentioned it. Number 27 offense in basketball. Worst 3-point shooting team by percentage that we've seen in the NBA in the last 9 years, Logan. Under 32% from deep. And that's on both Paolo and Franz, and that's also on all the spot-up guys around them. There's also very little creation around them. Not a lot of downhill threats around them. Not a lot of particularly good playmakers around them. Like, there's just so much burden on these 2 guys who are both very talented, but still struggle with their own efficiencies, have to deal with this absolutely hellish spacing, and it's just too much to ask. It's a really ugly offense against a great defense in Boston, and Orlando has a great defense. They're second in defensive rating this year, but you know Boston is still going to produce really good offense no matter what. They have too many creators. They have too much shooting, so I legitimately struggle to see how the Magic win a game in this series. Like, it would have to be, I think, a collective Paolo and Franz masterclass. I think they have to combine for, like, close to 70.
60? Yeah.
Yeah, I would go north of 60, and then you probably still need an off-shooting night from Boston, which
and you need other guys.
Can't totally rule out, but
and you need other guys to go crazy. It's not just those 2 guys. Man, dude, I want to preface this stat with Paolo and Franz were both injured for a little bit, so some of these games, the Orlando was just insanely beat up with nobody to carry the offense. Orlando had 9 games this year with under 90 points scored.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's in the Big 2025, guys. Like, that's so ridiculously hard to overcome, especially against a juggernaut like Boston.
100%. And that's the other thing. It's not just that they're lacking in offensive skill. They play so slow. Every possession is just a slog.
Specifically in this matchup, that's why that 3-point stat is so damning, because it's like you just have to reach a certain level of 3-point shooting ability when you're playing Boston, because they are so high volume and they're so efficient. It's like, if you're this bad, Boston just has so much more margin. If they're getting 3 every time and you're getting 2, they're just going to run away. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, man. Can we take this? We'll talk about this in the future, but, like, Orlando's just got to get that star guard, right? Like, that has to be their number 1 priority, right?
100%. Because right now they just need more offensive punch. They need more playmaking. They need more of everything, man. Shooting around their 2 wings, and Paolo and Franz don't have the most seamlessly complementary skill sets offensively, which is one thing, but above all else, like, the dudes around them just aren't good enough. Like, it would be nice if Wendell Carter Jr.'s shot hadn't just fallen off a cliff this year, and now he's a 23% 3-point shooter. If you felt like, oh, maybe he could actually punish a KP for playing drop with the pick and pop game, but, like, no, he's been one of the worst shooters in basketball. Jonathan Isaac has had a terrible shooting season, so I think it could be interesting to see them maybe go Isaac at the 5 and just be super defensively versatile. But, like, if he can't spread you out offensively and make shots from outside, what does it matter? It's just a huge mismatch here, man.
I got another over-under for you. So
okay.
Over-under 1.5 games in this series that the Magic don't crack 100 points.
That's a good line. I'm going to say Damn, that's a good line. Because I only think this goes 4 games.
Right?
That's the thing. I'm
I'm
going to
take
say
the over, actually,
over.
man.
I'm going to say there's 2 games where they're sitting on like 97, 98. I think they're in for a slog. Now, I am really excited to see what Paolo looks like in his second appearance in the playoffs because he's been playing some really good basketball as of late and I think has really fully recovered to the form that you like to see him in, getting to the line at a monstrous rate, and his scoring efficiency has been solid and his volume has been super impressive. He's got quite the act to follow up from last year, where we talked about just his shot making was so good from the mid-range, from beyond the arc. Can he replicate that? Probably not, but it'll be interesting to see how he fares against a really, really good, really tough playoff defense. And same goes for Franz, because unfortunately with Franz, like, I was really hoping the three-point shot was going to come back in a bigger way this year. It's still been pretty rough, but he had a very bipolar playoff series against Cleveland last year, I would say, where he had a couple of great performances and a couple of really bad performances. So at the end of the day, if you're Orlando, like, you're basically just evaluating how do Paolo and Franz look. That's what matters, because you know the team around them is going to change so much, and you hope that you're encouraged by what those two guys give you, which I totally think is possible, and the Magic still could get swept in this series because Boston's just a phenomenal team, and the Magic are very limited. I want to talk about this Bucks-Pacers series, Logan, because we did our preview the other day, and at the time there were rumblings that Dame was progressing well, so we should have at least acknowledged that it was a possibility that he'd come back, but now it's really looking like he will. He's out for game 1, but he's off of his blood thinners, so that's, first of all, just an incredible recovery from the blood clots, and I saw, as I often mention, Brian Suterer, MD, who's my go-to with all this sports medicine stuff, be like, this is really not normal practices for a blood clot. This is a much quicker process of taking Dame off blood thinners than you would normally expect to see. So obviously we don't know the specifics. Hopefully they're not rushing anything or doing anything reckless. And it's just Dame is healthy and ready to go, which is a wonderful thing. But given that, both of our initial predictions were Pacers in 6 for this series. How does Dame being back change the dynamics of this series? And does it change your official prediction?
It does change my prediction, but I'm not switching teams. I'm going to move it from Pacers in 6 to Pacers in 7, and primarily because I still think the Bucks' Achilles heel is their Achilles heel. Now, does Damian Lillard shrink the margin? Certainly, and I would give the Bucks a very good opportunity to win this series. When Giannis, we mentioned a bunch of stats in our preview earlier about how Giannis has dominated. You read off well, first of all, Giannis has been on a tear. I think he's averaging like a 30-point triple-double during this Bucks winning streak, which is just ridiculous, or close to with assists. A couple games ago, he was up at like 11 or 10 a game. But you mentioned how Giannis has just dominated the Pacers over their last 15 appearances. So Giannis is going to get his. And now that you have a guy like Dame, who is still a one-man offense and one of the best shooters in basketball, I'd give them a very good chance. That being said, the reason I'm still going to take the Pacers, I think the Pacers offense is still going to get what they want. Dame coming back doesn't change that. He's not an elite defender. He's not a guy that's going to be able to...
He's certainly not that. Certainly not that.
He's not going to provide a ton of resistance to any of the Pacers guards or change that dynamic. That's number one. Number two, you mentioned how historic it is that Dame has returned this quickly. I think it would just be a lot for me to expect that Dame is going to be Damian Lillard from earlier this season, just miraculously. I'm so glad he's back. I am praying that they're not rushing him back, that this is not an impulsive decision, because it really is truly historic. You don't see anybody that deals with blood clots come back this quickly. I mean, you're normally
less
out
than a month.
Yeah, I mean, you're normally out the rest of the year. You're normally out half the year. Like, you don't play with stuff like this. So I'm praying that Dame is ready to go, and this is not like a, oh shit, we need Dame. I hope they're not rushing him back.
Yeah.
It just doesn't change the dynamics enough for me. And the third reason is because Dame and Giannis still have yet to fully realize their potential together. And we mentioned that last episode in our preview, but That may be enough. If Dame and Giannis had fully realized their potential together as a duo and maximized each other when they were on the court together and really enhanced each other, that may be enough to give them the edge. But because we haven't seen that, it doesn't give me full confidence. And so, look, this has shrunk the margins in this series. I would give the Bucks a very good opportunity to win this series. I'm like 50-50 on Bucks in 7 or Pacers in 7. That being said, I just think the Pacers offense in totality is better than the Bucks offense, and I think both of these groups are going to struggle to stop the other team on defense. Yeah. So because I prefer the Pacers offense in totality to Milwaukee's, even though Dame is coming back, I'm going to change mine from Pacers in 6 to Pacers in 7.
Dame coming back absolutely helps the Bucks, but I don't think it helps them quite as much as some people might think. Now, there are some areas where it really does make a difference. Like in the non-Giannis minutes, I am much more comfortable with Dame carrying the load there than like a Kevin Porter Jr. Obviously, Dame has been at his best offensively when he's on the floor without Giannis. That's when he's been most productive. That's when he's able to play his ball-dominant style of basketball where he's able to run a ton of pick and roll and look more like the Damian Lillard of years past running the show. It also obviously helps in terms of scaling down everybody else's responsibilities. Like Ryan Rollins has been playing some really solid basketball for Milwaukee as of late. You're a little nervous about him having to start in a playoff series, though, just kind of out of the blue. And now you have Damian Lillard slotted back in. So everybody else is just asked to do a little bit less. You feel a little bit better about your depth, although I still think that that's definitely a comparative weakness for Milwaukee compared to Indiana. And of course, like, you're just getting Damian Lillard back, man. You're getting another really dynamic offensive threat on the floor, somebody who can really create an advantage, somebody who can really step up as a high-level scorer alongside Giannis when you felt like you didn't have another guy like that in your lineup without Dame. The reason that I don't think it helps quite as much as some people might think, though, is because the Bucks have been playing great basketball without Dame. The Bucks have a 123 offensive rating with Giannis on the floor without Dame this year. That is absolutely phenomenal. With both of them on the floor, they have a 118 offensive rating, which is still quite good, but it's not the sort of elite number that you're getting when Giannis is able to run the show himself. So it does help absolutely to have another high-end creator on the floor like Dame. But I genuinely think that Giannis ball is when the Bucks are at their best. When Giannis is effectively acting as their point guard, when he is able to consistently be the one initiating possessions, getting downhill, and he just has a bunch of spot-up shooters around him, and he's so good as a passer, and he's such a crazy driving threat, of course. Like, that's when they've produced their best offensive results. He and Dame just have a tendency to step on each other's toes a bit on offense. And now Dame is phenomenal with the ball in his hands, but are you asking Giannis to screen for him more? Like we've just seen, right, their two-man game isn't nearly as effective as it should have been in theory. That's not going to change at this point. So I don't think it helps their offense as much as a lot of people would probably think looking at just adding Damian Lillard back to this team on paper, both because Giannis has been so good at producing offense in the non-Dame minutes and also because the two of them offensively aren't quite as potent together as they should be in theory. And the other thing here is it does absolutely nothing to help their defense getting Dame back. In fact, I would say it hurts their defense. And it's that side of the ball that's my big concern for Milwaukee in this series. I thought they were going to have a really good offensive series without Dame on the floor. I just thought the Pacers would have an even better offensive series because I don't think the Bucks have answers for them on that end. Specifically, I talked about this a lot in our full series preview, so I don't want to be a broken record, but I just think Brook Lopez is going to have a really rough go defensively. He's an old, slow-footed big against a team that likes to play really, really fast, and he is a rigid, true drop coverage big against a Tyrese Halliburton and Miles Turner-led pick-and-pop attack, where you have an elite three-point shooting big in Turner, and then you have an elite pull-up three-point shooter in Hallie. You have an elite floater shot maker in Hallie, and he's just going to pick those coverages apart. What the Bucks do a lot, as I mentioned last show, is they put Brook in drop it, then they have a wing rotate over so that Turner isn't just getting wide open pick and pop threes, but then that's going to free open another shooter elsewhere. And the Pacers just move the ball so well. They have so much offensive IQ in totality, and Hallie leading the show can make such excellent decisions that they're just going to get a lot of great shots if Brook is on the floor. And now you also have a true point of attack liability out there in Damian Lillard. So I do want to see them try some Giannis at the 5 lineups with Kuz at the 4 and do more of switching everything. And maybe that way you're at least making the Pacers work harder for their buckets. But when Dame is on the floor, if you're switching everything, now that's the guy who people are going to be targeting in terms of mismatch hunting, and he can just really, really get destroyed there. So it's good to have Dame back on the floor. It's just great to see him healthy. That's the most important thing. I am going to adjust my pick like you, and I'm going to say Pacers in 7 now because Dame can win you a game on his own, and that's super valuable. And if there isn't one game in this series where Dame has 38, 40 points, I'd be surprised. Like, he just has that sort of scoring ceiling, but I don't think his impact is quite as great for this team specifically as his box score production will be. And I'm still going to prefer the Pacers' elite offense in their own right, which I do think is just a smoother, more symbiotic operation. And I think their depth is still a lot better. Their formula is just a little bit cleaner to me, and they have clearly more basketball players who I really trust. A lot of the same concerns that I laid out about the Bucks in our preview don't just go away with Dame back on the floor. I still worry about Kuz falling apart as a shooter. I still worry about their depth compared to Indiana's. And so for those reasons, I'm going to say this is really, really tight because that Dame and Giannis, just the two of them being so damn good at basketball is scary, but I still think the Pacers are the better team in totality.
Yeah, I'm aligned with that. What would you give it percentage-wise, though? Because I really am like at a 50-50 with this series.
I wouldn't go 50-50. I'll go 60-40.
Okay.
Because I think Giannis is going to go absolutely insane, as we discussed. He could carry you past Indiana, especially now that he has another guy who is capable of those explosive performances on the floor with him. But I do think Indiana's the better overall basketball team still.
Yeah. Maybe I'll go like 55-45, but I would give, again, we got it in 7. So I mean, like, you know, a bad performance or something could swing this in the last game of the series, but I think Indiana is the better team. I think they've got better role players, but I'm super intrigued. I'm way more intrigued now that Dame is going to be back for this series.
Yeah, I was kind of excited to see Giannis just have full control of the operation and see what sort of nuclear numbers he could put up, but I still think he's going to put up insane numbers. And now I do think the Bucks have a bit of a better chance at winning the series. I'm also just like happy for their fan base that they hopefully are going to have one playoff run that isn't significantly impacted by injury, because 2022 you have Middleton out, 2023 you have Giannis in and out with injuries. Last year you don't have Giannis at all, and this year it was looking like you weren't going to have Dame at all. So at the end of the day, I think the Bucks have some pretty big issues that exist whether they are fully healthy or not. I just think they've done a bad job of building out this roster, but you at least deserve the chance to see it in action, and they are hopefully going to get that for the first time. Another reason I would still lean Indiana is we don't know how many games of Dame you're getting. Is it going to be 4? Is it going to be 5? Is it going to be 3? Like, we don't know when he's coming back.
Or the minutes potentially too, yeah.
Yeah, we just don't know. There's still too many unknowns for me to pick Milwaukee to win this series. The NBA 82-game grind is done, and now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs are here, and it's time for all the high-stakes drama, clutch moments, and jaw-dropping plays. I can't wait. If you're looking to make the playoffs even more exciting, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered as an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in games all the way through to the finals, now's the time to back your favorite players and teams as they chase glory.
All season long, DraftKings has been the go-to spot for NBA player props, and that doesn't stop now. Want to make your playoff experience even more intense? Try placing a bet on your favorite player's performance. Will they drop 30 points, 40, or more? It's your call. Ready to place your first bet? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, lock in your bets, and let's make this playoff run unforgettable.
Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Let's look at the plan before we get out of here, Logan. We had two teams whose seasons were ended last night, the Sacramento Kings and the Chicago Bulls, both of whom got beaten pretty convincingly. Who should be more disappointed between those two teams about how their season ended, Logan?
Got to be Sacramento. I mean, it's got to be Sacramento. Like, one, they fired their GM. Monty McNair is now out.
Yeah.
Scott Perry is in. They announced that second the ball game was over. They said,
yeah, for real.
Get out of here, Monty.
They got after it.
I mean, the Kings are basically the West Bulls from, like, the past 3 years now. Like, they've just got...
They've got Zach LaVine. They've got their
two best players, yeah. And then they've just got a different European big man. I think I slightly prefer Sabonis to Vucevic, actually.
Slightly. This guy with the slightly.
I'm not too fond of either of them. So it's like, I mean, the Kings traded their best player, and they ran back a worse version of the Bulls from the past 5 years. So it's like, I don't really think it's a contest. I think there's a lot to be optimistic about with Chicago because they finally chose a direction. I'm not the biggest Josh Giddey guy, but Josh Giddey shot pretty well from behind the arc, and I think that's very encouraging from a young player just to see any sort of progression like that. I love Kobe White. That guy is one of the best flamethrowers in the league. When Kobe sees the ball go through the net a couple of times, he can just get hot and rip off an insane quarter. He's an elite spot-up player and shooter. I love Matas Buzelis. I think Buzelis is going to be something very, very special in this league. I don't know if I can confidently say like an all-star caliber player, but I think around there, or maybe one of those all-star caliber players that's not an all-star. And what I mean by that is one of those really, really high-impact winning players with what he brings you in totality, defensively, in transition. And I think he's got real upside. Again, not superstar upside as an offensive player, but some more upside as a ball handler, as a playmaker, as a shooter off of the dribble. The Bulls are building to something. I don't know what it's going to be. And I don't know if this should, be included in my argument, but also, like, the East is just nowhere nearly as competitive as the West. There's a real opportunity for the Bulls to get better and to be in the playoffs next year. I don't think that exists for Sacramento. Sacramento currently exists in purgatory with no number one. They've got 3 number 3s.
Yeah.
Awesome, Sacramento. Let's go. Like, that's what sucks about dealing away Fox, is at least you had your number 2, and if you could have made a big swing and gotten that guy, the Kings have regressed. Like, it's just... And they had the guy! They had Halliburton, man. Damn!
Yeah, it's impossible not to look back at the Hallie trade, which, Logan, I know you have been adamant about. We're both big Hallie guys here. Was a big mistake. You chose the wrong guard to begin with. Hallie is better than Fox. I think that he clearly has a higher ceiling as an offensive engine. But the real disaster is within 3 years, you lost them both. You traded away Hallie. You didn't do nearly a good enough job building around Fox, at least from his perspective. And then you reach the point where you have to trade him. And when they traded Fox, when those rumors first emerged, I said, this is going to be hard for Kings fans to stomach because they went through so many miles and years of sewage before they finally got to be a competitive basketball team. But as harsh as it is, like, your best option at this point is to blow it up. Because without De'Aaron Fox on this team, with the core that they were going to have to try to put together, like, your ceiling is just so low. And unfortunately, they tried to sort of keep their chips in by getting LaVine, by not getting the most draft capital that they could have, by not really pushing for a bunch of young players. And at the time, I was like, hey, man, I can't hate on this because you did get back a really good player, and I know how much the Kings specifically value just being competitive and keeping their fan base engaged. So, like, I said, this isn't a disaster, but when we look back in a few years, are you going to be happy that you traded for Zach LaVine, or are you going to wish that you had pushed really hard for Stephon Castle and an extra draft pick or 2? My feeling was the latter, and now I feel like at the end of year 1, you can already say, like, yeah, this wasn't worth it.
Let me ask you something. Can they run this back next year?
Yeah, can they? Sure. I mean, what's going to come of it? Nothing. Dude, part of the reason that I think it's actually pretty possible that they do is these are three guys who are not easy to trade. Like,
No, not at all. Any of them. They're all weird. Well, I'd say Levine is probably the easiest to fit in somewhere, but
he's
DeRozan
still on the
and
big contract, and they just traded for him, so he's probably the guy they're going to be least inclined to move just because of
well, I'd be
optics.
okay with that because I think that one, I just wouldn't want to give up, and then you can really make the easy comparison of you gave up Fox for this because you know you're basically giving up Fox for Levine, and then whatever you get back for Levine is what you got for Fox. But DeRozan and Sabonis are really clunky wherever they go. They're not really easy, seamless fits, but I'd be okay with that. There's no way. The spacing is too bad. There's no direction. There's just nothing encouraging. They're going to be in the play-in again, man. Like, that's basically, if they run this back, if they don't make any adjustments.
Maybe. Well, you're going to have the healthy Spurs next year. The West is going to be even tougher. The West is an incredibly difficult place to win basketball games.
I really want them to deal 2 of the 3 or all 3 and just blow it up.
Yeah, I think that that's going to be a lot easier said than done, but I would absolutely be looking to move off of these guys, and specifically Sabonis, man. You look at these playoff type games, and he's pretty much always bad. I know this is your Super Bowl.
Oh, really?
Logan. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Look, man, I've never been a Sabonis guy.
Cap.
But
Stop the cap.
What are you talking about?
Stop the cap.
What are you talking about? You just say
cap.
the most outrageous shit like Miles Turner is better than him, and then I call you on that.
I
am not a Sabonis guy.
I'd rather have
See,
Miles
that's still
Turner
a terrible
than
take.
Sabonis.
No, that's still a terrible take. How dare you try to frame me as a Sabonis guy, Logan?
You had Sabonis in your top 30,
I had him
bro.
at number 29. That's lower than most people would have had him, and guess what? I still regret it. But you know, this will make you feel good. You know who should have been in that spot, Logan? James Harden. So how's that a fucking win for you, huh? Yeah. Eat that. I don't think that Sabonis has ever been a guy who was easy to put a really, really good basketball team around. And I've consistently said that. That being said, I'm not as low on him as you are because you say things like he sucks and you slander him.
Do you think Sabonis could play the 4?
In 2012. I mean, he came into the league as a 4, but
the only reason I asked that
don't.
is because I think there's a very specific archetype that you have to have alongside Sabonis. I think you need a guy who can actually be a legitimate like rim protector as a help side or as an anchor. And I think
you need Chet Holmgren alongside him.
Yeah.
And guess what? There's not a lot of those guys. It's tough, man. What I'll say is most frustrating about Sabonis, and this has always been his limitation, and this is what we talked about after the 2023 playoffs and what we talked about after the play-in game last year, and it's the same exact thing that you see in the play-in game this year. Like, he can run his handoffs, and he spots cutters, and he's a great screener, and he's going to be great on the glass, and all of that stuff is good, and it makes him clearly a positive offensive player, but he cannot score the basketball at a high enough level to be an elite offensive player. He is not one of those unique bigs who can run inverted pick and roll for you or go out there and get himself a bucket on an island. He's not a super skilled post scorer. He's strong, but he just has good, not great touch. And so there are certain guys who can provide a physical counter to him and they can limit his scoring volume. He improved as a jump shooter this year. Didn't make a difference in the one do-or-die game of the year. Like, he's just not comfortable enough as a high-level scorer to be able to leverage that scoring threat into, like, truly elite playmaking, truly elite offensive value, because I don't even think his defense is as big of a problem as it's been made out to be. Like, he's super mediocre there. But he's not like somebody who single-handedly is going to hold a team's defense back. The problem is the Kings' defense in totality is bad. But it's the scoring that really frustrates me with him. So, yeah, I shouldn't have had him in my top 30 players. I felt weird about it at the time. Now I would definitely take him out, but I'm putting James Harden there, so deal with that. But just because of the clunkiness of his skill set, still not being a plus defensive center, which is always what you want from that position, and being a guy with the sort of scoring questions and jump shooting questions that he still has, I don't think you're going to find like a robust trade market. Like, the Sacramento Kings have truly built the ultimate mid-3, man. They have taken 3 dudes who all have major flaws when it comes to driving, winning at a high level. If it's defensive engagement, effort, if it's some of their unique offensive skill sets that like can be tough to fit in alongside other high-end offensive players. Like they all have their sort of weird little quirks that limit them. And like you said, man, like they feel like three dudes who are meant to be your third option on a really good team. But then you question, like, even for one of those teams, can they fit? Like, LaVine is the guy who has the seamless offensive skill set. He does. But at the same time, like, the defense with him is bad. It's a problem. I just think he carries perhaps some sort of negative spell around with him, man, where it's like Zach LaVine's teams always suck, man. And like throughout his career, they're just consistently worse with him on the floor. And all these dudes have an average age of over 31 years old, and they're going to make a combined $116 million next year. So you're in a truly catastrophic position. Like, you should have tried to get more out of Fox if you were destined to trade him in terms of your future. You should have realized the ceiling that you were going to have with this new core, and they didn't do that. And so I don't know where they're headed from here, man. Like, yeah, they're probably going to try to trade these guys, but they're going to be hard to trade. So hopefully Kings fans can withstand another year or two of this core and like have the perspective of, hey, at least we're mediocre instead of terrible. But realistically, it's better to be terrible than to be mediocre, because then at least there's something on the horizon. You're getting high draft picks, and Kings fans know that. And I know that they're very frustrated, because I do think a lot of them felt very optimistic in 2023 with the regular season they had. And it's all just come crashing down so fast and so hard.
I'm in my bag right now trying to cook up a Sabonis for KD trade.
Good God. Jesus.
I mean, the Suns would be idiotic to do this, but
I mean, that would also just piss me off, because like I don't want to see KD go to the Kings. I want to see KD go somewhere he can contend.
I'm just looking. I was just perusing all the NBA teams that like need a guy like Sabonis, like a big body rebounder.
Yeah.
There's no actually like easy fits. The only one is like Oklahoma City, and the only way to make that happen is you'd have to give up Kason, Isaiah Joe, Jang, and Aaron Wiggins, and it's like the Thunder are getting worse.
Yeah, no, they'd never do that. They would never do that.
So I don't. None of these guys are easy to move.
They're not. They're really, really not. We'll see if rumors start picking up, if anybody emerges as a contender, but there's not a lot of spots that I love for Domas. There's not a lot of spots that I love for DeMar, for sure. LaVine, I think you could talk me into more situations, but I still think that there's some real questions that teams are going to have about taking him on as a real part of their future. So, answering the question, like the Bulls might be headed to this point in a few years, right? Like right now they sort of have the benefit of being shielded by their youth, and like they're trending upwards. And so you can say, oh, theoretically this guy is going to be this. And realistically, I don't think they have an all-star on their roster. And if you don't have an all-star on your roster, like there's obviously a very hard ceiling on that. But hey, they're not there now. They aren't $116 million in on three guys who on average are over 30. They aren't dealing with all this in the West. So obviously the Kings have had the more disappointing season. They are really in a really difficult spot. Let's make our predictions for the play-in, Logan. We'll go real quick here because it's a single game format. It's hard to ever know exactly what's going to happen. But let's start, Logan, with the 8th-seeded Hawks taking on the 10th-seeded Miami Heat out east. Who do you think comes out of this one and gets to face the Cleveland Cavaliers and get absolutely demolished in the first round? Wow.
I'm so ready
Powerful stuff.
I'm so ready to write Miami off. I just don't know, man. I didn't think Miami was going to get out against Chicago. I think I'm going to take Atlanta just because I can way easily see them having a good offensive game. And for Miami, it always just feels a little bit more laborious. But who knows, man? Tyler Hero could go crazy again. And the Heat aren't a bad team. But, yeah, regardless, I mean, this team's going to get probably swept in the first round by Cleveland,
yes.
Whoever wins.
I'm picking whoever wins to get swept for sure. I'm actually going to take Miami here, and I should have taken them over the Bulls. I don't know. I guess I didn't really put that much thought into that pick at the time, and I was like, Bulls have been winning games as of late, but I'm not a real believer in Chicago. Not to say that Miami is a very good basketball team, but they've got their own version of a big three with Hero, Bam, and Wiggins, who I think are very clearly three of the four best players in this matchup. I think they should start Davion Mitchell for this game. You put him on Trey, and you get your best guard defender on him, hounding him for 40 minutes of the game. And I just think Trey has to be so good for the Hawks to win. And this past game for them against Orlando was just like very dark from his supporting cast. His teammates made 3 of 16 threes in the game. No one else can really do anything with the ball. And like Trey found a way to get this team to 40 wins. God bless him. And he could easily still get them into the playoffs. He could go off for 35 and 15, but the Heat have more dudes who are really good at basketball. And even though the Hawks do have the best player in this matchup, I'm going to rely on the Heat. But this is pretty close. I mean, I could really go either way with this one. Out west, we have the 8-seeded Grizzlies against the 10th-seeded Mavericks, who, of course, put away the Kings and killed their dreams. Who do you see getting the lucky draw facing the Oklahoma City Thunder in the first round, Logan?
This is fascinating, man. I just think it's going to be a really interesting matchup against Oklahoma City in general, just because these teams are so big and jumbo size, right? If it's Dallas, you're going to get AD, and Dallas has had OKC's number. Like, PJ Washington might drop 50 points a game in that series. PJ was killing them in the regular season, and it is just a stark...
Lest we forget the playoffs last year.
Yeah, it's just a stark contrast, because you have... It's a big-ass team, man. Gafford, Lively, AD. Damn. And it's going to suck for whoever misses the playoffs, right? For Dallas, after trading away Luka, you missed the playoffs. For Memphis to have... I'm going to take Dallas because I think Memphis is just spiraling right now. I think this team is... I'm going to make a vibes pick here. I like the vibes in Dallas a little bit more. I think the vibes in Memphis are trending downwards.
Logan, I got to say, you might be the only person who's high on the vibes in Dallas. I think the vibes in Dallas
I mean, the vibes for both of these organizations are terrible, but I'm going to take Dallas.
It is going to be such a huge disappointment for either one of these teams to miss the playoffs entirely. I'm going to take Memphis here, but it's very close. The Mavs are good when Anthony Davis plays. They are massive. Their defense is excellent. I still just worry about their offense a little too much to pick them to win this one. Like, AD is so damn good, but he hasn't fully hit his offensive rhythm with this team yet and is still really trying to figure out the fit, right, playing alongside centers as much as he is. If you look at the Kings game, you got a lot out of Clay and Brandon Williams. I don't really believe that they'll replicate that. I just think their ball handling, their shooting, it's all a bit limited playing the two big looks as much as they're going to. But the defense is great, and they would be so damn good if they just had Kyrie Irving, man. And, like, obviously, that's not to say that the Luka trade wasn't a complete disaster, which it obviously was. But the biggest, most disastrous part about it was that it destroyed their future. It would have been nice for Mavs fans to at least get to see the short-term vision of the madman that is Nico Harrison, because that still should have been a really good basketball team if Kyrie didn't go out for the year.
Did you see that interview clip with him
Tim
and
McMahon?
Tim McMahon?
Yeah.
All-timer.
He's remarkable. He's just absolutely remarkable.
He's an idiot, but okay. Remarkable we can go with.
Yeah, he's remarkably stupid. That's what I'm saying. He's a marvel.
It's so funny. You were the way McMahon phrased the question was perfect too.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were talking about having a competitive window for the next 5 years. So, you don't have any first round picks from 27 to 2030. So what's your rationale? And then Nico was like, "I can't hear you. Can you repeat that?"
He said, "How's that good for the long term future of your franchise?" And Nico says, "I'm like, I don't know."
He said, "Can you repeat that?"
I don't understand. Yeah, he's something else, man. So, sorry, Mavs fans. You don't have Kyrie Irving. I think that's the difference in this game. If you did, then I would definitely pick the Mavs.
Brandon Williams 45 piece incoming. Bro.
You think so? You think so?
I do like Brandon Williams, actually.
I know,
yeah.
You're a big Brandon Williams guy. Do have to point out, Ja's not 100%. He didn't practice today, obviously tweaked his ankle in the Warriors game. And Memphis has been playing a lot of mediocre basketball. They have just been plummeting in the standings. Their defense has fallen off a cliff. I also think Dallas's size and rim protection makes this a tougher matchup for Triple J. But Memphis, in totality, they just still have a fair bit more offensive skill. What I'm getting with Ja's ability to just dust people off the bounce and still score and play make at the level he can. Triple J's scoring potential. Desmond Bane, right, what he can do for you as a shooter and an all-around offensive contributor. He was great against the Warriors. I'm going to bet on John Bane playing pretty well. I'm going to bet on Memphis being the better shooting team in totality, and I'm going to say that they pull through in this one. Before we get out of here, Logan, we got to do our picks for the DraftKings King of the Playoffs. This is actually a super fun opportunity. DraftKings is asking people to pick who they think will be the highest scoring player of the first round of the playoffs. This is by total points scored, not points per game. And if you pick the winner correctly, then you split a $2 million prize with everybody else who picked that same player. So there's some components to the strategy here that I'll walk you through, at least from my perspective. You want, obviously, somebody who's going to score a lot of points, but you want somebody who is in a series that you expect to go long, to go 6 or 7 games so they can rack up those total points. And maybe if you're feeling cheeky, you could try to get somebody who you think is a bit undervalued, somebody who you're not expecting to be the most picked player, but obviously you don't want to go out there and pick Norman Powell, because Norman Powell, good as he is, he's not going to outscore the entire playoff field in the first round. So there's that balance to strike. I thought this was a fun exercise, Logan, picking out who I wanted to choose here. Who are you taking as the king of the first round?
Coming into this, I thought I was going to take Giannis because he wasn't going to have Dame, because I thought the series would go so long. Like, you know, if you get 6 or 7, it's almost guaranteed that he's going to give you 180 or 210 just because of how much he's dominated Indiana. So I don't think Giannis is a bad pick, but with Dame coming back, I don't like him as much. So he's a dark horse for me, but I think he's a good pick. My other 2 dark horses, I really like Jalen Brunson. I think that Pistons series is going to be competitive. I think they take 2 games, maybe 3, and I think he's going to score a ton. And I would also honorable mention Anthony Edwards, because I think it's a really bad matchup for LA, and I think he could have some really big scoring performances. I think a lot of people are going to take this guy. I think he is the no-brainer pick for this one. I know that you probably won't, because you were mentioning the matchup. I'm just going to take Jokic. I think that series is going to be super competitive. I'm the most confident in that series going 7 games. That's probably the biggest reason that I'm going to take it. I think it just has the highest probability of going the distance. But more importantly, I still think Jokic is the best scorer on planet Earth. Him or SGA, you can take your pick. But SGA series is going to last 4 or 5 games. Yep. So I think Jokic is he'd probably be the favorite, but I'm going to take Jokic. I just think he has the highest likelihood of a series going the distance, and I think he's going to be up around 28 to 30 a night. So I'm going to take Joker.
Jokic is a good pick, of course. I really, really considered him. I was also looking at a sneaky Kawhi Leonard in that series, because I do think that series has a good chance of going 7. Oh, Logan, yeah, you guys, he's not going to be there.
I'm not today.
No. Well, listen. I ended up not choosing him because realistically, is he going to outscore Jokic in a 7-game series? Probably not. And there is more risk involved with his health than any other option. I considered Luka because he's been so damn good against the Wolves, and I think has the potential to have a really big scoring series. But I'm going to take Giannis here, man. I'm going to keep it simple. In his last 15 games versus Indiana, he has averaged over 36 points per game on 70% true shooting. He is going to have to carry a super heavy load in the time that Dame is out, and even when Dame gets back, we don't know when that's going to be, but I still expect him to go insane because his numbers against Indiana with Dame on or off the floor are absolutely nuclear. They are basically the best numbers, especially scoring numbers, that any individual player has put up against any individual opponent in the league over the last few seasons. Also, If you needed a tiebreaker, if you needed one more reason, this is the only series I'm picking to go 7 games. So I am looking at the guy who I expect to score the most per game, because he has shredded Indiana as a scorer like nobody has done to any other opponent, and the series that I think has the best chance to go the distance. It was pretty easy for me to pick Giannis. Kind of a basic pick, but I don't care. I'm confident in it. I feel really good about it.
Yeah, as do I.
All right. Logan, you know what I don't feel good about? You trying to paint me as some Domantas Sabonis guy. Sometimes I think in your mind, your sick and twisted mind, you have such a warped perception of things. Like sometimes I think you think I'm some sort of Ant hater because you think that Ant is going to be the greatest basketball player of all time.
Well, I do think that. Yes,
that's what I'm saying.
But
sometimes I just view myself as a counterbalance to you.
Okay.
Because I'm not a Sabonis guy. You know this over the years. I've never been high on him.
The one thing that I really took issue with Sabonis was 2 guys. And that would be Big Zoo this year, and then it would be Bam Adebayo. Those are the 2 guys that I would really take issue with.
Zoo
not
is
being
tough.
over Sabonis.
Well, you asked me this one last episode, and I said with Zoo, it really depends on the situation. I think with both those guys, it really depends on the situation.
Sabonis, really?
They're in the same tier. Yeah, man, because like Sabonis does have an ability to provide an offensive floor because of his playmaking value, because he's still going to give you really efficient scoring production throughout a regular season and give you close to 20 a game. It's just against an elite playoff defense in a high-stakes situation, you have some real concerns about his scoring volume. Zoo is such an efficient play finisher. He is such a good, pure, rim-protecting, drop defensive big, but he still has his limitations defensively when it comes to versatility. Obviously, I mean, there's massive gaps between them as passers, even though Zoo is a very solid passing big. And it's not like Zoo is somebody who's creating a lot for himself as a scorer either. Like, he is definitely a more efficient post scorer.
Yeah, to me, Zoo's just a little bit more reliable as a scorer. And I
don't know, man. If you were asking Zoo to carry a more significant offensive load without a playmaker like James
I just think
Harden,
he can physically overwhelm guys way more than Sabonis. They're really similar, but I think he's got better touch. I think he's more of a physical mismatch. I think he's a way better defender. So
I don't disagree with any of that. I think it's a pretty clear situation of like if you are trying to slot a guy in as your 3rd best player to raise your ceiling on an already very good roster, I take Zoo every day of the week. If I want a guy to be one of my 2 best players, probably my 2nd best player, to take a team to win 40-something games, then I want Sabonis. And generally I do lean on the side of ceiling raising, but I think that there's a pretty significant gap in terms of the ability to carry that real offensive load between these 2. But I think they're in the same tier. I think they and Bam are all in the same tier at the end of the day. But congratulations, man. I'm glad that you got to have this Sabonis disaster class to end your season, because I know this is going to fuel you throughout the offseason. Well, folks, we talked about the play-in games that are coming up, but we're going to be live after those play-in games tomorrow night. We will talk about the action that we saw, and we will give our quick previews of the 1 versus 8 seed matchups, and then we'll very, very quickly run through the rest of our hypothetical playoff brackets. We won't spend a ton of time making in-depth predictions about series that are hypothetical, but we do have to let you know who we're picking to win the NBA Finals before this whole thing gets started. So look forward to that. And by the way, just advice to everybody who watches us on YouTube, be ready for the lives, because a significant majority of our content is going to be us going live post-game throughout the playoffs, which we will be doing most nights, including Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of this upcoming weekend specifically. So if you want to stay locked in with all of our stuff, if you want somewhere to go immediately post-game to get your takes off, to hear our analysis, then we're going to be here.
Yeah,
Anything
turn on those post notifications.
Yeah, turn them on.
Yeah. Turn on the post notifications and lock in, bro.
Turn them on and lock in. You're firing me up, Logan. You're firing me all the way up. I would go to war for you.
Look, dude, I love doing the playoffs every year. I have never been more excited for a playoffs than this year. I'm geeked up right now, bro.
Yeah, especially for the first round in the West. Whoo-wee, I can't wait. I cannot wait. So, hope you guys are feeling as excited, and if you are, then I hope you want to enjoy this journey with us. If you want all of our long-form content, it's on our YouTube channel, all of our full episodes and our video essays. You can also listen to the full episodes across all audio platforms, wherever you get your stuff. You can follow us across social, TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh to see clips from the show, graphics from the show, and all of our short form trivia content. You can also join our Discord if you want. That is linked at the link tree across our social media bios. And you can check out our merch if you want. That is also linked in our link tree. So with that, as always, I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.